political economist as well as sociologist who profoundly influenced the subject of sociology, its theory, its methodology, its research. And in that sense, I think sociology assumed a very different space. Now, coming to the next point, let us see the major works of Max Weber. Major works of Max Weber, as you see on your monitor, these are the Protestant Ethics and Spirit of Capitalism. Max Weber, the Methodology of Social Sciences. The City is another work. The Religion of India, Sociology of Hinduism and Buddhism. The Religion of China, Confucianism and Taoism. Now, the good thing is that now all his works have been translated, and they are available for you. So these works have come out in different epochs of the history, and they have led to the understanding of sociology very differently. Friends, as you all know, that every thinker, social thinker, assumes a different vantage point to understand society. You also must be having a different point of understanding anything, and therefore, sociologists, social scientists, they also have their own way to understand, their own point of understanding. We have discussed yesterday that how Durkheim carved out a very different subject matter, methodology to understand social reality. And this social reality was basically social fact, and it is in this context he constructed his social understanding of society. Now, similarly, Weber has also carved out his own methodology to give sociology a very different subject matter. However, we can ask here that why it has happened, and the answer is very well known, that Weber came out from a very different intellectual tradition. His training was in German tradition, while Durkheim was trained in French tradition, where actually Newton and Newton's general science, or Newton's universalistic science, natural science, was very dominant method of understanding social reality. But here the German tradition, where radical dualism was very rampant, and it is here that, friend, this radical dualism was trying to argue that the natural world and socio-cultural world, they are two different worlds, they are different type of realities, and therefore we have to have different method of understanding natural world and the social world. It is in this context, friends, that we can argue that you cannot put one method to understand the natural reality and the social reality, because social being, as Weber put it very correctly, that social being thinks. Trees, plants, and also the hills, water, they cannot think. So their understanding of social reality is totally different, and that is one dimensional. They do not react, but human being reacts. Human being is a rational thinking being. Rational thinking being means, suppose there is a fire. If there are 10 people and they see fire, then 10 people may react differently, and it is in this context, friend, that thinking human being have to be understood differently. That is why Weber defined the subject matter of sociology differently and also define sociology also differently. Let us see the definition of sociology as given by Max Weber. Now, Max Weber says, and you can see your monitor, Weber defined sociology as a science which attempts the interpretative understanding of social action in order to arrive at a causal explanation of its causes and effects. So, we have to see that sociology as a subject, as a discipline, has a very different subject matter, and that is social action. Now, the moot question is, what is a social action? You can definitely ask that how did Max Weber define social action? So, let us see how a social action can be defined. A action is to be distinguished from behavior in that it involves meaning and intention, and therefore social action, Weber says, is an action which takes account into the behavior of others and is thereby oriented in its course. That means a meaningful action. No, you keep on blinking your eyes, but that is a behavior. You keep on actually talking and you spit a little bit in between. That is a habit. That is a behavior. So that is not action. Now, a social action has a meaning, and therefore I will give you an example which is quoted on and off, that if you are going into a market, and all of a sudden rains, so everybody will open umbrella for protecting themselves from rain. But that is not social action according to Weber. But suppose it rains and everybody runs helter and skelter, and actually they open their umbrella, and in umbrella what happens that the spoke of umbrella goes inside the eyes of someone, and there is a fight, there is a conflict between two persons. That will be called as a social action according to Weber. That means any meaningful action which is oriented towards another person, and therefore its future can be also decided, that is called as social action. So social action is different from behavior. Now, it is in this context, friends, how to study social action. This is what Weber gives us the methodology to understand and to read, because then and then only we can understand. And you can see very well that there is a long drawn definition of the methodology, and this methodology is nothing but ideal type. The first and the foremost methodology of Weber is ideal type. Weber argues that we cannot understand social action only by observation as we do in natural sciences. We have to have a different methodology. Why? Because he says that suppose a person is cutting the wood. Now, if a person is cutting the wood, how will you come to know that person is cutting the wood? Because he is a wood cutter. By observation, you cannot understand. Unless and until you go and talk to him that what is the purpose of his wood cutting, whether he is cutting the wood for his house to prepare the food, or he is cutting the wood for burning the funeral pyre, or whether he is cutting the wood to sell and earn his livelihood. If the last version, that is, he tells that yes, I am cutting the wood to sell them in the market and earn my livelihood, then and then only he will be called as woodcutter. Otherwise, he will not be called as woodcutter. So, by only observing with your naked eyes, it is very difficult to understand a social action, and therefore you have to go and talk. Therefore, he suggests two levels of understanding. Second para you see, therefore he suggests two levels of understanding of social action. One, at the one level that there is a direct observation, and at the level of second level is you have to have interaction. You have to interaction with the actor. If you don't go and interact with the actor, you may not be able to decipher the meaning of the social action. And therefore, he calls this understanding as interpretative understanding of social action. That is the way sociology should put its methodology to understand a social action. So, he defines what is the subject matter, what is the basic unit of sociology as a social science to understand, and that is social action. What is a social action? It is different from behavior, and because there is a meaning attached to an action. I told you the meaning. Now, after having known the meaning, you have to observe the social action. How will you understand the social action? That means at two levels. You have to understand a social action at two levels if you want to understand social action in totality, completely, not partially, as actually the scientists understand atom or understand fire or they understand tree or plant. You are trying to understand social action, social being, which is part of a wider interaction pattern, is rational thinking human being. Now, it is in this context, friends, we see that Weber develops a very different methodology for constructing the subject matter and to understand that subject matter through interpretative understanding, and that interpretative understanding is two levels of understanding. One is by observation through the naked eyes, and once you have observed, you go and interact to understand the meaning of that social action by the actor himself. You don't have your own subjective meaning attached to it. You have to ask the actor why he is understanding. Then let us now, friends, therefore we can see that Weber is basically talking about interpretative understanding. Now, it is this type of understanding cannot be done on its own. It needs another tool. So, observation, interpretation, and then clubbing together, we move forward, that it cannot be done independently. It needs a further tool. What is that further tool which Max Weber has developed? This tool is nothing but ideal type of Max Weber. What is ideal type, friends? The meaning of the ideal type, the sociological concept of ideal type, why a social scientist construct an ideal type, how a social scientist should construct an ideal type. There are different ways to understand. Let us see the definition, how to define ideal type. And you can very well see that according to Max Weber, ideal type is a mental construct like a model for the scrutiny and systematic characterization of a concrete situation. That means Weber used ideal type as a methodological tool to understand and analyze the social reality. According to Weber, the ideal type concept will develop our skill in imputation and research. It is not a description of reality, but it aims to give an unambiguous means of expression to such description. That means ideal type is basically a tool, a tool to understand the social reality. It is not a reality in itself. Rather, how we come to understand a reality, it is a reality check, you can say. Now, after that, friends, in other words, what we can say, ideal types are concepts. They are concepts formulated on the basis of facts collected carefully and analytically for empirical research. Hence, ideal types are constructs or concepts which are used as methodological devices or tools in our understanding and analysis of social phenomena. So, time and again, I am talking about their tool, their device. But how this device is constructed, that is what actually is very important for us to understand. Now, ideal type, if you see Weber, how it is constructed is basically the ideal types are abstractions. The ideal types are formulated by abstractions. So we abstract some realities. We are combination of indefinite number of elements which we extract from reality, and they are basically discovered from a specific form. Now, for the construction of ideal type, the sociologists select certain traits. Certain traits are basically selected. Now, number of these actually, I'll give you an example to prove this, that suppose you have to construct an ideal type of Indian democracy. Suppose you have to understand Indian democracy, and you have to construct the ideal type. So, what are the elements in the ideal type? Now, here we can mention some essential characteristics of ideal type of democracy. Number of elements which can be discussed to construct ideal type of democracy. The first element of any ideal type democracy is existence of multi-party system. Multi-party system is basically a hallmark of a democracy. There are monarchy where the kings rule, one party, that is the last one. But we are talking about democracy. There are two-party system democracy as well, like America. There are actually Democrats and Republicans. But our country has multiple number of, there are at least 40 national parties. That's what they say. State parties and national parties. But here I am talking about democracy with multi-party system. One element of democracy is multi-party. The second element of democracy is adult franchise, universal adult franchise, that everyone is allowed to cast his vote if he has attained a particular age, and in our country it is 18 years. If you are 18 years, then you can cast your vote, and that is adult franchise. The third element of ideal type of democracy can be formation of government by people's representative. That means people representative are chosen by the people themselves through their votes. They are not nominated by someone else, but people's representatives are chosen first by the people themselves. People also participate in the decision making. That is also an ideal type of democracy. Now, the last, or there may be many other elements, but equality before law. Whether you are king, whether you are queen, whether you are rich, whether you are poor, whether you live in urban center, whether you live in rural center, you all have right to be treated equally before the law. Suppose you commit some crime, then your punishment will be according to the rule of law. It should not be that you are high, rich, and therefore there will be no law on you. No, it is not. So equality of law. So we have existence of multi-party system, adult franchise, we have formation of the government by the representatives, we have actually decision making where the people participate, we have equality before law. All these constitute a system of democracy. So if you want to understand democracy, then we will make these elements, and they say that, look, this is democracy. And then we start comparing Indian democracy, elements of Indian democracy. For instance, Indian democracy has multi-party system. Definitely it has multi-party system. There is adult franchise. Fine, there is adult franchise in Indian democracy also. People's representatives make the government. But friends, when it comes to decision making, then there is a problem in Indian society. In Indian democracy, there is a problem. People do not participate directly; they participate through their elected representatives. Now we are going towards the grassroots democracy, and that is Panchayati Raj, in which people participate in the decision making, and therefore people can say that yes, we have actually limited participatory democracy, but yet the larger participatory democracy has to emerge. And it is in this context, right, we will say that there is a problem with Indian democracy and the ideal type of democracy, that is ideal type democracy, has helped us to understand democracy, Indian democracy. We can understand Indian democracy through the ideal type of construction which we have made. So in this sense, the ideal type as a tool helps us to understand social action as given by Weber. This is somewhat a methodology of Weber. But friends, we must move a little bit beyond this, because once you understand what is social action, what is sociology, how to study social action, and how ideal type, let us also understand a little bit about the types of social action given by Max Weber, because Max Weber has tried to characterize 4 types of social action. These are very important, because sometimes people say that, social action is social and it doesn't have anything more to be qualified. But Weber goes on a bit ahead, and he tries to identify 4 types of social action. And if we see these types, the first type is, of course, the traditional social action. Traditional social action, which is basically guided by the customs and long-standing belief, which becomes habits of the individuals. So traditional social action, we see that in the family, in the society, like king is one of the important element, or one of the important social action which we see, which belongs to traditional social action. The king, if this is king, is the emperor of the area, then actually his son will be chosen as the king after his death, and his son will be chosen after his death as king. So this is basically traditional social action, where it becomes habit and nobody question, because it is custom of the society. Similarly, if you see, there are societies in which we see the property is transferred from father to son to his son. That is known as patriarchy. This patriarchal system is basically a traditional system in which action is driven by only tradition. There is no questioning. Similarly, there are matriarchal societies as well, in which we see that traditional action takes place. Now there is another action which is known as affective action. Now this affective action, this kind of action, results from emotional state of the mind of the actor. Now mind of the actor, that means if suppose somebody is heckling me many times and I become very emotional and I hit him. Usually, when I am very angry because somebody is heckling me, somebody is basically ridiculing me without any fault of mine, so I become very angry and I hit him. This is basically nothing but an effective action which emerges out of my emotion. Now, the action, third action is basically the rational action in terms of goal. So to achieve a goal, you take certain action. Now, I can give you an example that an engineer is constructing a bridge and he needs all the material to achieve his goal of building the bridge, and therefore he keeps on actually asking for goods. He keeps on asking for iron, he keeps on offering laborers so that he can build his own bridge. Now, the fourth action is rational action in relation to value. This is also a very important type of social action. Rational action is the rational action in relation to value. Now, I can give you an example here, friends. The example is, you can read that a soldier laying his life down for his country at the borders. Now, why does he lays down his life? I gave you another example the other day when admiral of the ship basically sinks himself with the sinking ship without leaving it, even though he knows that look, he is going to die. But that sacrifice is basically considered to be the highest type of sacrifice which people make. Another example of value related action can be given is the sati of Indian society, in which the women who were for the group, who were for the family, used to lay down their lives on the funeral pyre of their husbands. And in this context, therefore, friends, we have, according to Max Weber, social action which has a meaning, which is oriented towards them, and that orientation gives us the futuristic trend of the action, what is going to happen in the future. But not only that, the meaning is basically differentiated on the basis of the type, on the context, and the course which it takes place. So we have traditional social action, we have basically effective social action, we have a social action based on rational of values, relation to values, and relation to goal. So this broadens the ambit of understanding of social action according to Weber. Otherwise, we could have thought that look, social action is only a monolithic whole and there is no internal differentiation. From here, friends, we can move the types of authority given by Weber, because action is oriented towards different types of meanings, and that gives you authority. So what is authority? Let us take the definition of authority. But before understanding authority, we have to have power. According to Weber, there are three systems of legitimation of justifying power, and this power comes out of traditional means, charismatic means, and rational legal means. So what is power? Power is nothing but influencing people even against their will. So if you forcibly do something against the will of a person, you are using your power. But when this power is legitimized, then it is called authority. That means legitimized power is known as authority. In other words, we can also say that when people want to influence, or when people legitimately influence the others, it is called as authority. And there are three types of authority which Max Weber has given us to understand the authority system. The first is traditional authority. The second is charismatic authority. The third is rational legal authority. Now, if you take the first, traditional authority, then we can very well understand that as the traditional action, it comes out of long drawn custom. It becomes habit in the society, it becomes the custom of the society, and therefore we see that traditional authority are basically bound to emerge again and again, because the society always have some element of the tradition. Now, these authorities are more prevalent in the old societies, the simple societies, because their traditions can be definitely traditions rule the society. Now, traditional society, after traditional society, if we see the charismatic authority. Now, here charisma means to influence people because of extraordinary qualities. If person has extraordinary qualities to influence an agenda of the time, then he will be called as charismatic personality. For instance, Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi ji, as we all know, had lot of charismatic personality because people thought that he can influence the British. Similarly, Ambedkar, B.R. Ambedkar also had lot of charismatic personality when he was trying to organize his people. Similarly, after independence, we saw Jawaharlal Nehru, and in 1971, we saw Indira Gandhi becoming a charismatic leader in India. Now, these people have extraordinary, people think, they may not be having anything, but people at large think that these persons have extraordinary power to influence the agenda of the society, and therefore they are called as charismatic personalities. Now, the third authority is rational legal authority. Now, rational legal authority emerges because of the rational laws that prevail in the society, the constitutional measures, the laws which have been evolved in the society throughout the ages, and because of that there are certain institutions and power is invested in them. Because of that, they are known as rational legal authority. And if you take example of Prime Minister of India or Prime Minister of any country, if you take President of the another country, if you take ministers of the another country, if you take IAS officers in India, PCS officers in India, they are all basically examples of rational legal authority. Now, in this context, friend, we see that Weber is trying to take his examples, take his course, take his subject matter of social science, sociology in particular, ahead with the types of action, what is action, types of actions, how to study social action, and then we see authority as well, which are commensurate. One type of authority, as we see, rational legal authority, as we see, the best example, if we see in India, that people are usually thinking that these three types of authorities are watertight compartment, and they are they are not found, they can only be found separately. It is not true, friends. These three types of authorities, the traditional authority, the charismatic authority, the rational legal authority, all these three can be found in different permutation and combination. You can see that actually some people may have all the three types of authority into one. Take for example Indira Gandhi. Indira Gandhi at the time of 1970 war, she had all the three authorities clubbed together. She was daughter of Jawaharlal Nehru, who was a freedom fighter. That was a traditional authority which she was having it. She was having charismatic authority because she had won Pakistan, Bangladesh, India war in 1971. She was called by different, she was called as Bharat Mata, and Atal Bihari Vajpayee called her as Durga, and therefore there was a charisma which was in it. And she was, of course, she was also having rational legal authority because she was Prime Minister of the country. Now in this context, I would like to submit that we can find all these three authorities, the traditional authority, the charismatic authority, the rational legal authority, clubbed together in different permutation and combination. And therefore we can see that rational legal authority, traditional authority, they do exist in different parts of the country, in the different parts of the people, in different parts of society, in different combination. One example which proves that how rational legal authority has influenced the world, and as we move ahead, modernization ushers in different societies, this rational legal authority has been influencing the world very, very differently. From this we find in this rational legal authority is vested in bureaucracy. Bureaucracy is also studied by Max Weber and is one of the seminal contributions which he has made to the subject matter of sociology and social science in general. Weber described that, or Weber argued that as the world moves ahead, as the development takes place, there will be greater rationality in the society, and world will have more and more rationality. The other traditions will go take a back seat. The charisma or traditional authority, all this will take a back seat, and we will how will it be implemented? How this rationality will be implemented? The rationality will be implemented through bureaucracy. Bureaucracy is considered to be the institutions of the modern society, and it is in the bureaucracy that we find that it is called the golden cage. People will be stuffed, people will be covered by the rules and regulations of the bureaucracy, because bureaucracy has 9 elements or 8 elements to be 9 or 8 elements which are very important and which depend upon rational system. So bureaucracy itself is a rational system which will be characterizing the modern society in the sense where rule and law of land and rule of law prevails, as we see. Now if you see the elements of the bureaucracy, the first and the foremost elements of the bureaucracy is that there is achievement law. Anybody can join bureaucracy if he has, or if he or she has required qualifications. Now, there is official duties which are defined. Each person has also commensurate authority and responsibility. So you will do this work and the other person will do another work, and it is here that the whole work is divided into higher and lower, and this gives hierarchy of official. All the officials are not at the same rank. There are certain higher ranks, there are certain lower ranks. The higher ranks give us the order and the lower ranks takes the order, but this is all done through laws. There are laws written. Now, if you see there are specific qualifications in the bureaucracy. There are also desired qualifications, as well as there are minimum qualification. You cannot enter a bureaucracy without the required minimum or desirable qualification. So you have to have a qualification if you want to enter bureaucracy. Let's see another element. There is a fixed tenure in bureaucracy. It's not that you can, like traditional authority, that you can keep on ruling even if you are very old. No, you cannot do that in bureaucracy. There are specific age limits for every type of bureaucratic stage, and it is in this context that tenure is fixed, that after this many years you will retire. Tenures are also fixed for promotions, that after certain time period you will have promotion, you will have also a higher pay package. Another element of bureaucracy is promotions, that after certain period you will be promoted and you will have a fixed remuneration. Without minimum wages, without wages, there cannot be rational legal authority of bureaucracy. So your tenure is fixed, your pay is fixed, your promotion is fixed, your work limit is fixed. There is division between personal, and there is difference between personal and public. So you cannot mix personal and private. It is in this context, friend, that bureaucracy has very stringent laws. These stringent laws not only give you a rational picture, because the rationality demands that there is commensurate relationship between goal and achievement. So it is in this context, I think, bureaucracy has a very legitimate exercise if you see rational legal authority is concerned. Now, in total, friends, if you see in total that how Weber began by asking a simple question, and that question was that we have to have a different subject matter for sociology, and that subject matter of sociology and social science was social action. The subject matter for Durkheim was different, and for Weber was different, and they were both trying to make social science or sociology a science. They were trying to take social science towards a science, or sociology towards a science which was a different approach of understanding social reality. Now, from here, if you see that Weber also tries to deal the traditional action, and he studies religion. His seminal work, Protestant Ethics and Spirit of Capitalism, was basically in a way, a dialogue with Karl Marx. He was trying to enter with Karl Marx, because Karl Marx had already established a stage where people were talking that yes, the reality is material. The material is the reality, the matter is real, and the means of production takes place because of the matter, and this production of matter is decides the future, and that ideas come because of the matter. But Weber was of the opinion that matter is one thing, but it is the ideas. It is ideas which basically create revolution, and it is in this context he gives example of spirit of Catholics, that these people, how they have Protestant ethics, how Protestant ethics have contributed into making the social revolution. And because of Protestant ethics, the spirit of capitalism has come, and there is a different culture, and that culture is basically capitalist, and the economy is developing. Now, what was this actually argument? People before that was thinking that no, we should not indulge in glamour, we should not actually enter into show and pomp, we should not have consumptious life. But Weber argued that it was the spirit of capital, it is the ethics, Protestant ethics, which were trying to argue that look, if you enter in economic activity, that means you are trying to understand the calling of the God, you are furthering the glory of God, and therefore you please enter into the economic activity. The surplus started coming, and that surplus was again invested, and that gave birth to a system called capitalism, which was of course rational, which was not like traditional or charismatic, but it was rational system, and which also had bureaucracy as a system. So we see that rationality was also another element of Weber's methodology, because he was trying to argue that whether sociology can be value free, and he says that we can at the most talk of value neutrality. Value neutrality means, I can explain you with one example, that suppose you want to study river Ganga. River Ganga, if you want to study, you should not approach river Ganga because it is pious, it is really worshipable. For Hindus it is very, very pious. But if you say that, then you will not be able to choose. You will not be able to study a problem. Yes, for choosing is fine. You can choose river Ganga as your subject of study. But once you have chosen, then you have to put all your biases, all your past understanding, all your subjectivity aside, and then you start approaching the subject matter very objectively as it is. It is water, it is a river, it is basically a river which gives so much people a life. And in this context, friends, we can argue that value neutrality is possible in sociology. We cannot be value free. So from social action to value free sociology is the contribution of Max Weber, which makes sociology so different. His subject matter, his treatment, his methodology, his contribution, his understandings of types of social action, and then his tool of ideal type, his understanding of bureaucracy, all has made a difference of sociology as a subject, which has given also social science a very new understanding, because people before this were trying to argue that no, social science can also have the same method as the natural sciences used to have. But Weber was of the opinion that no, natural sciences and social sciences are different, and therefore we have to have different methods, different methodology of understanding.